Flex your business with an American Express Business Gold Card. You'll earn 4 times membership rewards points on your top 2 eligible spending categories, like transit and electronics, each month, on up to $150K in combined purchases per year. Plus, you can now earn 3 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Terms and points cap apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-gold. Amex Business Gold, built for business by American Express.
Welcome to
4Kids Flashback. Hello and welcome to 4Kids Flashback. My name is Tara Sands. I am your co-host, joined by...
Steve Yurko.
Steve Yurko. Wait, Hot Pockets, Steve Yurko. There it is. I always
Sure.
Did. That's a different jingle.
Huh?
I don't know.
No,
Anyway.
that sounds like the Hot Pocket jingle.
No, it's a Hot Pockets. And but I always do Steve Yurko. I don't. Okay. If there's someone who's more musical and knows more about jingles than I do. No, I think. Okay, I'll figure it out before we get to the thing. But
Sure.
Anyway, Steve, I fangirled so hard recently, and I'm not ashamed, but like, I always love when it happens because it reminds me how people feel about some of these shows.
All right. So what are the deets here?
Okay, so, and like I told this person, I have fangirled at a convention that I've been working at 3 times. Danny Trejo was one.
Mm-hmm.
C. Thomas Howell was the other because I loved The Outsiders and I had him sign my Outsiders book from like 5th grade. The original copy, and he was like, wow, you've had this for a while. And then this past weekend I met Jim O'Hare, who played Jerry, also known as Larry, Gary,
yeah,
all
I did
the
see
names
that,
on The Office, not on The Office, on Parks and Rec.
Yeah.
And I love that show. And part of my convention ritual is like that I watch Parks and Rec on Saturday mornings and Sunday mornings on Comedy Central because it's a station that most hotel televisions have.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally geeked out. I got a signed Funko. I kissed his ass. I told him how great but he ended up being such a sweetheart. But that's my confession. What's the hardest you've ever fanboyed over someone?
Hardest? This is going to sound like such bullshit, but I think like doing conventions and like working in industry, I kind of developed this
well, you play it cool.
Yeah, like you gotta play it cool.
No, but like inside, who were you most excited about?
I've wanted to meet Patrick Warburton for a long time. And a friend of mine did just this local show with him a couple years ago and introduced us, and and what was nice was it was just kind of just like a casual. I'm there with some other people too, so it was easy to just we wound up talking about a convention that a bunch of us had been to before that he was a guest at prior, but just that's
a good one.
He's so his whole decorum is exactly how he is on TV and in movies and stuff, and he was definitely someone bucket list was someone I wanted to meet. Keith David was another person who I didn't get to meet, but I was at the same party as him. I just remember I'm like, who is this guy walking in here with this purple suit? And oh shit, it's Keith David. And I was talking to a coworker, and meanwhile I'm having an actual conversation with this coworker, not gonna lie. But then I see Keith David over his shoulder, and I'm just kind of peering.
It's hard not to be distracted.
And I'm like, how can I weasel my way into just saying pleasantries with Keith David? And I missed my chance. I think he went home early.
All right. Well, speaking of early, our guest is in our Zoom waiting room early. You guys, we usually tell you all the places to check, but check the show notes for all the appropriate links. And we will be right back with Joshua Izzo And I hope I'm saying that right. I will find out soon. Our guest today is Joshua Izzo. Joshua started his career at Topps, the famous card company, then moving to 4Kids, then moving to Hasbro, working on Sigma 6, then Capcom, then 20th Century Fox, and eventually Lightstorm. So we have a lot of questions for him. Welcome to the show, Josh. Ooh, ah.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you, team. Thank you, Steve. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I have to start out by saying that you and Steve share an alma mater.
Oh, indeed. Steve, take it away.
I've never heard the term before.
Is it
really?
Is SVA not a school where you say alma mater?
No.
You totally do. Oh, yeah. Alma mater just means any place that you graduated from.
I want to hear your fight song.
Oh, no. I can tell you I can do my high school one from Seton Hall. But no, SVA, no, SVA was just, their only song was the cash register of them taking all of our money. That was it. That was all they really, it was a cha-ching. That was it. That was their.
I won't deny that.
Oh, yeah. It was a thing. Yeah, but SVA was, it was a lot of fun. I learned nothing, but it was, my father's.
What was your major?
Illustration.
Oh, okay. I was cartooning, which is like the redheaded stepchild of illustration.
Well, I straddled the line because I went there because I wanted to do comics.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took a lot of comics classes. So I was in Walt Simonson's class and some other stuff. And, Julie's, survey class was lovely. But then partway through, I realized that comics were an absolutely incredible, difficult business to get into. Mm-hmm. And I just don't have that grind that I had read comics for decades, but I didn't have the brain to hand to art coordination to tell stories sequentially was something that I was it was opaque to me. And so I switched to children's books and I ended up going to the children's book track. I ended up meeting my girlfriend, fiance, then wife there. But my father, he said to me in no uncertain terms, he's like, listen, kid, I'm going to send you to art school. That's cool. You just better be ready to be broke as a joke for the rest of your life. And I was like, thanks, Dad. And that was no lie. And that's actually what led me to Topps is I started interning there during SVA, during my college. I was basically their mail guy. I answered fan letters to their Star Wars magazine. And I was like just helping around the office. And when I graduated, Ira Friedman,
Ira's a sweetheart.
Isn't Ira the best?
Some Garbage Pail Kid stuff.
So Ira was my boss. He was my first true full-time job boss. I was working there and he basically was like, well, kid, congratulations. You want a gig right out of college? And I was like, sure. So minute one, like a dope, I didn't go travel. I didn't have fun. I graduated. Then that Monday, I started a full-time as an editor, art director, and designer at Topps.
Wow.
In their entertainment division under Ira and a couple other folks. But it was awesome. I'm not going to lie. It was so fun. It was
cool. So what year are we talking? Because this was not on your LinkedIn for some reason.
So graduated college in 98. So just started, basically, I was at Topps for 2 years. And then at 4Kids. So Topps for 2 years, I worked on the smaller projects when I was at Topps were, I worked on some Xena Warrior Princess stuff. I worked on Hercules, the New Adventures stuff. I did a little bit of Star Wars card product for the prequels for episode 1, which was really fun. And then also WWE and NWO, the wrestling. I did a couple wrestling products. So that was super weird. But then there was this crazy Japanese brand that came out of nowhere called Pokémon, right? And Wizards of the Coast was making millions of dollars, hand over fist, on the trading card game. WotC was just printing money. And the Topps folks went to 4Kids. They went to 4Kids and they talked to Al and team and said, we want to do just regular, boring, baseball cards, non-competitive to WotC. There's no gaming elements whatsoever. And after signing a giant check, Topps got the license. And when they came back, we had a staff meeting and they were like, hey, does anybody here know what this Pokemon thing's about? And I'm 21. I was living in Brooklyn at the time, in Greenpoint. I was
Before it
walking.
was cool.
It was dangerous. I had like a
Yeah.
blood stain on my apartment front step. Like I was watching Pokemon in syndication every morning. I had gone down. I would go to Chinatown and buy like and I would go down to like St. Mark's Place and I'd buy imports. So I had all this Tomy product. I was just a fan. So I was like,
Wow.
and they're like, "Congratulations, kid, you're hired to do Pokemon." So I ended up writing, editing, and art directing the first 5 Pokemon card sets. That was my project.
I have so many. Okay, I have so many questions.
So yeah, take it away.
Okay.
Take it away.
First of all, the audacity of Topps to be like, we know you have plenty of cards. We want to do another. I get that they
Oh.
were non-compete, but also the audacity of 4Kids to be like, hey guys, don't worry, we're just going to do another set of cards that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
was
Was that
amazing.
an issue?
So the fact that they were able to delineate it and say specifically, and we had to write on the box based on the cartoon. So it was like
Okay.
the animated series set, and it couldn't have anything to do. There couldn't be any battle stats. We weren't allowed to talk about like types. It really had to be very like this is about Ash, Misty, Brock, and Pikachu, and kind of that world. And it was branded as such. So and we had to use only the style guide art. We couldn't use any art from the card. So we had like the guidelines and guardrails for what Topps was able to accomplish was incredible. But it ended up being one of their best sellers. We went back to press, I think, a dozen times on the first card set alone because
Wow.
they just kept printing money. It was astounding. But it was a huge business for them. A lot of fun too. A lot of fun.
So they're some of my favorite cards because I do these conventions and people would bring me these to sign and I'm like, I love these. And because they're episode cards, I think people relate to them in a different way because
Very much
it's
so.
like, yeah, like, or the movie cards. So I've been buying them up and bringing them with me. Like I'm all over
Nice.
eBay buying them.
Nice.
But now I know 4Kids didn't have a cut of the other cards. Did 4Kids have a vested interest in
Yes.
these?
Yes, this was a traditional kind of like global consumer products where Game Freak and Nintendo worked directly with WotC on that piece of the business. And that was sort of like there was no oversight on the kind of 4Kids licensing side. This was a piece where they took their cut before all the dough went over to Japan. And that is when NOJ was actually still associated with Pokemon so it was NOJ, Game Freak, and 4Kids before the Pokemon Company kind of extracted all of that and had it. But that came in right as I was leaving because I worked with the Pokemon Company for a very brief hot minute with Bruce Loeb when they first launched here in the States. But this predated that when it was still like owned and managed by 4Kids for real.
Okay. So you were the one like actually going in and saying, let's use this screenshot from this episode or this movie still or this. That was you.
Yes. So
That's so cool.
So there were for the series itself, the actual TV series, this is how I first was introduced to Norman and his team at Entertainment. I had to ask and request from him a set of digibetas and identically time-coded VHSs. And so I would get the whole season and I would take an entire day off from work. Literally, I'd stay home in my house and I'd watch every episode of Pokemon and pause and say, I want that time code front. And I'd write down the time code for the front of the card. And then I'd keep going and I'd say time code for the back. So 100 cards out of 25, 36, however many episodes season 1 was or whatever it is. So I had to do that. Then I would send the digis off to a third party, which we had another company we worked with that could take a digibeta, do a screenshot, remove the motion blur, and basically blow it up to 300 DPI. And then we did that. So that was for the Kanto like season 1. Fun story on the movie, Pokemon not Pokemon the movie with Mew and Mewtwo, Pokemon 2000.
Right.
There was 0 assets for that movie. None.
What?
No, none.
Can you
4Kids
just
had
explain
nothing.
what you mean when we say assets? Can you just
So there was no art. No style guide had been created, meaning there was no original illustrations. There were no screen grabs from that film. And again, that was the first time you saw the opening, that mini episode, which was the, Pikachu's adventure, where they had him plus the kind of new gold silver Johto characters. We had Ella Kid and that kind of stuff. That there was nothing. So from a company that wanted to make a shirt or a mug or a cup or whatever, there was very limited art for them to work from. But if you wanted to do a trading card set that needed on average 200 pieces of art, we were alone. We were an outlier. So I came up with the ridiculous idea where I said, hey, isn't an actual 35 millimeter film sort of like a chromium transparency, sort of like a slide? And the art department was like, yeah, it is. And I go, so if I had a 35 millimeter film frame, you could scan that at a high enough resolution that we could put it on a card. Yes, we could do that. So I said, okay. So I called up Norman's office again and I go, hey, listen, can I buy from you one full movie reel, one full film of 35 millimeter Pokemon 2000, the one with
Wow.
Lugia? Can I buy that? And they were like, yeah, we can charge you for that. So we did. Topps did that. And for 1 week, I sat in the 4Kids offices in a dark office with a light box and a loop. And I went through seven reels because that wasn't digital. I went through 7 full canisters of that film, looking at every frame of Pokemon 2000, picking out with a script with an English transliteration from Paul Taylor, from our board Paul, looking at his transliterated script, picking a front and a back, and I cut them, put them in an envelope, card 25F, card 25B, stacking them up. Took me a whole week. When I was done, I had my whole card set finished, plus all my copy that I wrote along with it. I was writing the cards as I was going. Then I had probably a dozen garbage bags, big black garbage bags with the remnants of the movie.
Right.
I sent those to our factory, which was called Duryea, and they were in Pennsylvania. And they created from that the relic cards that you can get in the card set that have the individual film frames in them. Those were the leftovers from my.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
So
And those were for big money.
They didn't even bother setting up a little screening for you for that movie.
Oh, no.
You just had to...
I was in like a closet, in a little closet on 56th and at their office before the reno with I brought my own light box and my own loop. And I was there for like from 8 to 5 every day looking at this movie, trying to find the best pictures to tell the story of the Pokemon card set.
Was that light box from your SVA days or just...
Yes, yeah. I still have it. It's at home. My wife uses it for her art all the time.
This makes, I should clarify to the people listening, there were a lot of cards. So basically they had the episode cards, then they had the cards of all 151, plus chases, plus hollows, plus then all this movie stuff. So I'll put a link in the show notes to a page I found that listed every Topps card ever made.
Yeah.
This episode is brought to you by Amazon. Sometimes the most painful part of getting sick is the getting better part. Waiting on hold for an appointment, sitting in crowded waiting rooms, standing in line at the pharmacy, that's painful. Amazon One Medical and Amazon Pharmacy remove those painful parts of getting better with things like 24/7 virtual visits and prescriptions delivered to your door. Thanks to Amazon Pharmacy and Amazon One Medical, healthcare just got less painful.
So I worked on I did the first series, I did the Johto series, I did the Pokemon, the movie series, I did Pokemon 2000, and then I did Pokemon the Orange Islands. Those were my 5 card sets that I was in charge of. And then we did tins and we did special sets and we did all this stuff. But I managed that. That was my program that I managed. And I just...
You were like 12.
I literally was like a fetus just doing all this stuff but I like lived the brand. I was just actually telling some of my team here at the office prior to this, actually, while I was working on the first card set, again, the 4Kids team, I forget who it was, somebody, I was able to get basically a Pokemon red or blue, I forget what it was, in Japanese. It was like a region unlocked Game Boy game that I played. I don't speak or read kanji at all. And I played the entire game not knowing how to speak or read the Japanese. Like, I just figured it out as I went to be like, oh, okay, those symbols, that kanji means run. That kanji means fight. And I just figured it out to learn what the Pokemon game was about while I was still working on the cards and the animation stuff. So I was like in it. I was Pokemon master back then.
Wow. So were you like Steve grew up, he was a kid watching this stuff and he was a manga reader at the time. So he was knowing like all the changes that were happening to the 4Kids shows. Were you also reading manga?
I had, so yes and no. Again, I was in my 20s. I had moved I lived in Jersey, then I moved to Brooklyn. I was watching the show because the show was just cheeky and fun. It was just a fun show. And the Pokemon themselves were adorable. I'm a Squirtle guy. That's my story.
All right, I'm trying not to be offended, but whatever.
I'm sorry.
Cool.
I'm sorry. I'm a Squirtle guy. I mean, Squirtle Squad, they're pretty rad.
The sunglasses are really cute. Yeah.
I mean, he was pretty dope. Anyway, so I just thought the show was great. But I hadn't been reading the Pokemon manga, but like Akira and all of the kind of like classic manga. That's one of the reasons that I went to art school. I wanted to get into comics. That was part of that scene. I really loved that as just inspiration for the storytelling that I loved. But Pokemon just as an intellectual property, for me, my first instance was the cartoon. And then when I would go down to St. Mark's or I'd go into Chinatown and I'd just see all the Tomy merch and all the imported stuff, it was just fun and cute. One of the things that I remember buying was a Pikachu bank. He was sitting on a block, like a children's block, ABC, and it was like really beautifully sculpted Pikachu. And so like that came home with me. It talked. Whenever you put a coin in, it peeked. And then one time I bought, and this is just a adjacency to the Hasbro story that we'll tell in a bit. As we probably know, the demand was so high, and Hasbro was Tomy's import partner, and they first brought over all the mini figurines, the little mini ones. They put them in the Pokeballs. Mm-hmm. So they were blind bags and sets, and they had the figurines of Team Rocket plus Ash. Okay, that was all fine. But they also tried to localize some of their product. So when you bought the small talking Tomy product, you know, the ones you put on your hand and has the two sensors and they speak, right? There was a Pikachu one, there was, I believe, a Squirtle one, a Bulbasaur one, and I think a Meowth. So Hasbro couldn't do them fast enough that they actually started importing the Japanese language versions to get them out. So I bought a Meowth that was Meowth's original language in Japan. Like that some got through.
Familiar. Yeah.
Like it was, they couldn't get product here into the States quick enough.
Well, because it wasn't ready. Yeah.
So like I think some Japanese product like came into the States through their import license.
I have something I'm very proud of here. I don't know if you remember this. Okay, it's a ball, and when I was on vacation overseas a million years ago, and when you smack the ball, wait. Oh, it's not working. It was working like a week ago.
Old. It's old, man. Like
but it was working like a week ago.
Keep all those sound effects
in. When you smack it the right... Oh, it wants to. It says Bulbasaur, but I was really pissed when I found it because I didn't get paid for it.
Well, hey, there you go, man. There you go.
But that's so interesting because, again, we weren't part of a lot of the toys. That's interesting now that you say that because it really was a whole different division. They didn't even ask us. They just took the files.
Yep.
Okay.
That's exactly right.
So you're working at Topps. And then, this was the next question. I heard there was a set of Topps cards that was only released in Europe. Was that part of yours or that was
that might have been one? After my, that could have been after my tenure there because I did the first 5 and those were distributed everywhere. Topps had they had global distribution and those just went all over the world. Okay. And again, multiple reprints, all that stuff. But yeah, there could have been because I know the business continued afterwards after I'd left because I ended up actually looking at some of them when I went to 4Kids, kind
Yeah.
of reviewing stuff. But yeah, that's a possibility, but that's something I didn't know about.
So do you know why that collaboration ended? Or is that like something
The
you weren't, I know
tops
you
for
weren't there
kids.
for it. Yeah.
Um, there was actually, well, in the early 2000s, and you were probably not necessarily a part of it because you were continuing to do the VO. You were still in the production portion of the world. Pokemon did actually hit a wall at retail. And in the late 90s through the early 2000s, product was on fire and then it sort of plateaued and it did stall for a short time. And when I was at and when I joined 4Kids, I was in meetings with the Hasbro marketing and design and development teams, and we actually went through two teams. There was the first team, and they were making product that was really sort of lackluster. And this was like 99, 2000, and it wasn't actually performing at retail. Kids were sort of like, and it was boring.
Okay.
Then a second team came in around '01, and that rocketed the product back up again. So there was a slight lull where everyone was like, Pokemon's over. But then they were like, haha, just kidding. And then it jacked back up again and just became this sort of like evergreen brand. And that's one of the big, there's usually in the licensing and merchandising world, there is usually a 5 year um, audience churn where every 5 years, normally a new person, a new kid comes into an intellectual property, and 5 years, someone grows out of it.
Right.
So we had come into that kind of 5 year cycle where Pokemon had exploded, made a ton of dough, everybody cashed in, it got a little stale, but then a new crop of kids found it. The new season came on. There was a new film. The Thanksgiving Day parade debuted, and then it jumped up again into another realm. And that's when the Pokemon Company came here to the States and sort of took it to another level. Then it became what we refer to as evergreen, where now it was all the time, 24/7 toys, games. But Topps, I think, kind of rode that wave. And then there was a lull. And trading cards are at times a fickle business because you have to have them annually. And if you don't, it sort of kind of falls off.
Right. Well, and you're a good person to ask this because I remember reading years ago that like, yes, this 5 year cycle of the kids' interest.
Yeah.
But that's the reason they give for not making new episodes of certain shows. Like a Blue's Clues, they said, well, we have enough content to keep this age group busy, and then the next age group will start from episode 1. So
Pretty much.
what's in the secret sauce that like Pokemon can keep doing this? Because I know with my friends' kids, they try to start them at episode 1. So how are we still, I mean, I think I have some theories, but like in your opinion, why is it sustained and still is?
There's two reasons. And it's the reason why Pokemon has actually succeeded all of these years. There is an aspirational quality to Pokemon, and there's also a collectability in Pokemon. And those are two key insights into kids' habits that you can latch onto in a big way. Now, when you have an archetypal kind of hero character, I'm going to use Optimus Prime and Ash Ketchum as my examples. Optimus Prime is an aspirational hero, big brother, teacher, father figure. You look up to Optimus Prime. You might want to be Optimus's friend, but you look up to Optimus. You don't want to be Optimus Prime. Ash Ketchum is an aspirational hero. I want to be Ash.
Mm-hmm.
And every child who comes into the Pokemon franchise, the way that it has been built, which is you have the power to become a Pokemon master and you need to catch them all. That tagline was the best tagline that could ever have been crafted.
Yep.
It's like it was alchemically built. So the fact that you can put yourself into Ash's shoes and say, that's me, or Misty's me, or Brock is me, or even Gary is me, whatever. I can see myself. I hope nobody wants to be Gary. You can see yourself in those characters and say, I want to do that and go and have that behavior. And the fact that you can keep spooling out Pokemon after Pokemon after Pokemon, you have a never-ending supply of needing to catch and collect them all. So you can effectively start from season 1, but if you start from season 2 or 3, you can say, wow, Ash has a lot. How did he get so many?
Mhm.
And then you can point backwards and say, let me show you how his hero's journey began. Where this is Joseph Campbell stuff all day long. Let me show you how it started, and then I want to continue on that journey. Those two core kind of like behavioral play patterns, inspirational hero and collectability, are a winning combination. And it's one of those things that Digimon and all the other kind of also rans never really. If Digimon had gotten there first, might have been a different story.
Right.
Pokemon got there first and also had much more approachable, cuter, and easier to understand mechanics and characters.
Mm-hmm.
Digimon was very complicated. Pokemon was not. Very simple. That is a mouse. And it has a very kind of like human, like easy to understand analog to a child's world. That is a turtle. That is a frog.
Right.
That is a rabbit. That is a dragon. Everybody can really get behind that. My favorite thing is a cat. There is a cat. I like bugs. And that was Satoshi's, his original intent was like the pocket. I collected bugs. There you go. So it had this really beautiful and very, very elegant and very simple way of speaking to the kid in their own language, which is why, however many decades later, it still continues to be a juggernaut in the digital space, in the physical space, and product. It just won't stop. It has become that evergreen machine.
Yeah, and the artwork somehow speaks to children and adults. Like even
Yes,
if an
very
adult
much so.
doesn't like the show, because I know there's adults who are like, shut that thing off, or you
Oh,
watch,
yeah,
I'm
totally.
leaving. They would all of a sudden see this artwork and be drawn to it.
Totally.
I meet people like, oh, my grandmother loves Bulbasaur. I'm like, what?
Yeah, well, he's adorbs. He's adorbs.
And most of them are until they get to like 700 and they're like,
yeah.
oh
Then
my
they're
God,
like
we're out
weird.
of things. Yeah.
We're in, like now, like I play Go, so I'm still
Mhm.
like up down. Like some of the newer gens, they're a little out there, man.
Yeah.
Like, they're a little out there. They're a little weird. I'm putting on my boomer hat and I'm like, where's my cute electric rat? Like, come on, man.
I know. I mean, I feel for them because they've hit 1,000. It's like, what do you do with that?
Only
point?
so many animals out there.
Wild.
Whew. Okay, so you get it. So how does the transition? Sorry, we're going to keep you forever. The transition from Tops to 4Kids happen.
So right after the second film and the Orange Islands card set, I get a call from Norman Grosfeld, and Norman says, "Hey, you are incredibly knowledgeable about our thing. We could use someone like you, a big nerd, on staff." Honestly, it was like, you're a nerd. We need you. And I was like, that's cool. So the offer was super generous, was a lot of fun. And I was like, yeah, let's do it. So in 2000, I hopped from down in Whitehall Street up to 56th, and I started working for Norman. And at the time, entertainment was small. It was Norman, Kathy, it was Roland, Chris, Denitsa,
Mm-hmm.
Paul Taylor, and me. That was it. That was 4Kids Entertainment.
You guys our listeners have heard us talk about 23rd Street all the time. This is before the 23rd Street offices were even open. So he's talking
Correct.
early days. We were still
Right.
recording at Taj. The studios weren't finished yet.
Yep. I've been to Taj many times. So
Yep.
this was up at 56th and 6th. This is when they had not done the renovation yet. We were in the process of renovating that office. So 4Kids had floors 4 and 6. And so 4 was where production was, 6 was where the licensing agency was, and that used to be called Leisure Concepts.
Right.
Predated used to be Coleco. And so that was where that business was. So I sat on the 4th floor with licensing and with entertainment. And at the time, I didn't have a desk. I sat on a couch outside of Norman's office because they were like, it was so scrappy. It was like nothing was like, it was honestly, it was amazing. So I started there, and I was essentially helping with, like, they were working on Tama and Friends and a couple other shows, doing localization for those, couple of that things. But Pokemon was really the driving force. And so I reported to Norman, and I just kind of was the liaison between some licensees that needed access, like myself at Tops. So I was working with them. And also I would liaise basically between the licensing division upstairs and the art department, Wally, Susan Simpson, that like, and production, because they were kind of, there was a little bit of church and state there, where it was
Yeah.
like, we're making the show, you're doing all of the things, but show was moving so far ahead. They were working on season 4, 5, what have you, and the show and the product was still just like lingering on the old like Canto stuff. Anyway, so I would be kind of a runner between those two universes. Um, One of those projects, which is how you and I connected, was when Norman was writing and producing Pokemon Live, the
Yeah,
show.
I need to hear this story because
So
I
I
haven't
was
really heard it yet. Okay.
so I was in the middle of all of this while he was building that show. And this was like Julie Taymor's Lion King was on fire and he was doing a thing. And so his big dream was this like humans plus puppets. It was nuts. But the movie had come out, so Mew and Mewtwo were a known quantity and people loved them. They were crazy. So he developed this whole story and the whole thing. And then there was this one moment in the script, and I'm sure everyone who's seen Pokemon the Live, the show, the musical does, where Ash's mom and Ash is trying to get ready and it's a big hustle and bustle and his pants drop and he's there in his undies, in his drawers. The kids get a huge laugh. That gag was sort of bland. And I was like, could we do something funny with his boxers? And Norman was like, yeah, what do you got? And I was like, why don't we put a silly Pokemon? Like he's wearing Pokemon underpants. And he was like,
Yeah, of
he was like,
course. Yeah.
I like that. And so I was like, I'm on this. So I went upstairs and Paulina, who was another licensing person, she and I sat down and connected with one of our partners. It was like Concept One or one of the people that did apparel, I forget. And I was like, can you make me like a dozen, like, or 2 dozen bespoke underpants of Snubble that this kid's gonna wear on stage? And they were like, yeah, it'll cost you like $10, whatever. And I was like, yeah, done. So I designed and I had to do it strategically so that when the pants drop, you see the full Snubble face. Because I think he turned around, you see his backside. And like so I think it's front back, but like we designed this whole thing and it tested and it knocked the house down. And so that was my like one contribution to Pokemon Live was Ash's Snubble underpants.
So, okay. So, what stage was this at? Was it already touring, or were you
Oh no,
in
no,
rehearsals?
This is before it launched in Manhattan. They were doing tests, getting the thing
So
ready.
this was rehearsals.
Oh yeah,
Okay,
yeah. And they were
okay.
like bringing test audiences in. Is it working? Is that like what's the timing? And like this was ready for open, and I was at the premiere at I think it was Radio City.
Yep.
I went to the
I was
premiere.
there.
I was there for that, and like I was there. It happened, but that like I set that gag up for that show.
How funny. Something we've heard, and since you were kind of in on all this, is how the timeline for, like, I have friends who write Broadway shows. They work on them for years.
Oh no, Norman
was like, I'd like this in 3 months, please.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So how insane was it for you?
It was nuts. Well, that was also one of Norman's incredible talents and skills was his musical ear.
Yeah.
His musical background, like that over there off to the side, like writing all the theme songs and doing all of that, like that was his bag. Like as a producer and as a developer, he was incredible. But being able to like crack a tune, that guy was like magician. So I think he just hauled ass on that. And then I mean, the story itself it's not really a heavy lift. It lifts a lot from the movie. It has Mew being, Mewtwo being, a bad
the
guy.
puppets. I mean, just expecting the puppets to be
Oh no,
done.
like and I think this was, and again, this was in that moment where Pokemon was peaking, and it was right before that kind of fallow moment where it plateaued. So 4Kids was not afraid to spend the money to get that done because they knew that if they waited, this would never have come to pass.
Right.
So this was like iron is white hot. So let's get her done. And then there was like a quiet minute, but then right after that, we were in the nascent stages of the Macy's Thanksgiving Day thing. I was there for the launch of the Pikachu balloon and went to the debut of that for Thanksgiving of that year at the ESPN Zone. So I watched that come to fruition too, which was another kind of like big Pokemon milestone.
we talk about this a lot. Like, this whole office was so young. Like,
Yeah.
The fact that anything worked or happened is, I mean, you know, you work in the film industry. When anything just getting made is a feat.
Oh yeah, this was like everybody pulled every rabbit out of every hat. It was like held together with spit and duct tape. But at the end of the day, things got delivered, and that that like
magically.
It
But
really
also,
was.
people had the energy because when you're in your 20s is when you can do an all-nighter.
Oh
And
yeah,
when
you were busting chops. We were all nighters in Manhattan. There was moments this going back to the Tops days. There was a time when my girlfriend at the time we were taking a weekend trip to Salem, and the cards needed to go on press. And I was like, guys, I have this vacation. I have like a rooms booked. They were like, tough,
Sorry.
buddy.
Yeah.
I had the factory FedEx the on press sheets of the cards, the uncut sheets, to the hotel. So I get to Salem. We drive up from Manhattan up to Salem, check in, do some stuff. A tube arrives. I spend the rest of the night with my loop, color correcting, making sure all the copies right, legal lines right on everything, calling up the factory that night and saying, you're good to go on press because we needed to hit our deadlines. It was that like Pokemon was like moving at the lightning speed like that. But that's how 4Kids was. It was like just go, go, go. And there was a transition in the midst. So right, essentially kind of at that midway point, like 2000s, mid 2000, almost 2001, Norman got the division got big, started, Andrea came on, it got bigger. They had redone the fourth floor. I was doing more businessy things. So I moved into that's when I moved upstairs to licensing and I started working for Susan Eisner. And that's when I started reporting into Al. And Alyssa became my mentor. And she was really, helping drive my licensing education in that business. So that's when I got more into the Pokemon and other kind of licensed stuff. I was working on Ultraman, Pokemon at the time. And then the big project that I worked on there was I launched hand in glove with Alyssa Turtles. Turtles was my brand.
He's talking about Alyssa Tucker. You can
Yes,
go
sorry.
back and listen to her interview. So, okay, wait, I have a couple questions then.
Please.
Were you interested, because the licensing department is a much more business and not that it's not creative, but you were an art student. So
Yeah.
was that a big decision for you to be like, okay, I'm going to go do licensing now?
There was a brief moment of what is this? Because you don't go to school for licensing. I
Right.
found that in my career now. You just sort of fall into it. And nowadays it's actually a real career. But like way back in the old days, you're like, what? You can do this? You never really, if you don't understand, you're like, how does a Batman shirt get a Batman logo on it? Like, oh, there's a whole engine of destruction behind the scenes that gets that done. So when I first joined up, I figured out like that's when I first recognized that I was able to use left and right brain in a way that I couldn't anywhere else. I've never once in my whole career picked up a pen, a pencil, a paintbrush, and done real art for a living. But I've taken my art school lessons of design, development, composition, all that stuff, and helped in my licensing career. But I found that I actually knew what I was doing when it came to negotiations and being a sales guy, but then also working with the creative division and the PD folks to be like, okay, that's cool. But what if we tried this? And what if you put it on a gray shirt and you did like this glow in the dark thing and with a hoodie with the ears? Like that's where I found that fun little marriage of those two realms. And I was like, yeah, this is awesome.
Yeah.
That I can help build the business, but then on the other side, I can actually work with the PD teams to create really cool stuff. And so that was it was actually turned out to be a really fun transition, and that kind of projected me through the rest of my career.
Yeah, it's a great lesson. Like Steve and I talk about this all the time. It's about living a creative life, and that is not really usually what the thing that you set out to do is not usually what you end up doing.
100%. 100%. Good call.
So cool.
Good call.
Is that our SVA fight song? I don't know.
That is the fight. What you set out to be, you're never really going to be. Haha.
Yeah.
Well, Waldo Cabrera, who is another person you guys can listen to our interview with, is such a similar story to yours.
Very much so.
I mean, went to art school, knew everything already, that he was like, wait, I got to just start working.
Yeah.
And ended up in license. He created the Yu-Gi-Oh logo. So like,
Wally was amazing to work with. One of my favorite stories is it was E3 one year, and it was out here. First time, I think it was like my first time in LA. And it was myself and another woman that I was working with. Her name is Jamie, Jamie Leister. She was an admin, or she was doing, I forget what Jamie's role was, but she was like the two of us, we were together, we had a rental car, and Wally, who knew LA very well, he was like, come have this awesome Cuban barbecue with us. And it was in the middle of nowhere. We wouldn't know anywhere we were going. Jamie and I got lost in LA. It took us like 2.5 hours to find this hidden nook. It was the best food I'd ever eaten. We ended up getting there in time, but like we got lost here and lost these two like New Yorkers that were driving around
no
downtown.
map, no GPS, you guys.
No, nothing.
We didn't.
Like I think we had a printed out like MapQuest printout from the hotel. Like go here, and we were like we had to get gas, and we were asking strangers. Like it was nuts. But Wally was so fun to work with. In the art department, he really knew his stuff, and he really did. He helped drive that ship in terms of creative and keeping things fresh. It was awesome. He was so fun to work with.
Well, so much of what you're talking about, I keep thinking in my mind, like even getting those things FedEx to you, the difference that all these years make, this would have been done on a computer and taken 5 minutes. Like, do you think about...
It's wild. Absolutely crazy. It's nuts. Like we kept like getting fax. Like I had to fax approval forms to 4Kids. Like we still had paper tracking, like with carbon copies, like did so and so see it? And then we finally got a digital system, but it like took forever, man. It was wild.
Oh my God. Okay, so you mentioned you're working on Ultraman, which I don't know if you even know this, but we recorded a ton of all the episodes and only a certain amount aired. You like, were you privy to all that? And were you like, why is this?
No. So I was there for the inception of the Fox box.
Okay.
With Cubics and Ultraman. Like I was there. I would bore witness to that, and with Turtles and all that good, Sonic, the whole 9 yards. Ultraman Tiga was so far ahead of its time in terms of the humor and the kind of silly nature that Norman was injecting into that. He didn't play it straight. It was not straight. It was more mystery, MS3K.
Yes.
Like it was very Mystery Science Theater, kind of like really off kilter, sort of left of center. And at that time, like traditional kids programming on Saturday morning was still very either boys action adventure or comedy. There was no SpongeBob had not come into being yet. There was
no Adult Swim. You could have thrown that on Adult Swim.
Didn't exist. So that kind of like tongue-in-cheek fun boys adventure, which eventually became the de rigueur. Like that was what you had to have. It had to be boys. It had to be action comedy. That was what it needed to be in the late 2000s. But in late 90s, early 2000s, that was weird. And programming did not support that. It had to be like Power Rangers, which played it straight. It had to be Transformers, or very just right down the middle.
Yeah, Yu-Gi-Oh. I mean, like Yu-Gi-Oh wasn't
Yu-Gi-Oh
known
was right down the middle,
yeah.
straight up anime, like full on. Like there was no silliness. Like Pokemon was a comedy. It really was. It was comedy. You had some action stuff, but it really was a silly show. But Tiga just didn't land. But yeah, I think it was originally supposed to be a 26 episode order, but it was very scant.
Well, we have to ask if there's so much lost media, so we always have to ask.
I got nothing, man. I wish. I wish.
But also I needed to ask if you saved anything cool from Topps.
I actually sold and got rid of all of it when we moved from Rhode Island to California. I had to purge tons of stuff. I had uncut sheets and tons of cards. So I was like, I have so much landfill. It's criminal. My wife would love nothing more than me to get rid of 90% of it. But I did. I had to purge tons of stuff. But I was an editor on Xena magazines. I wrote for the Xena magazine. I did Star Wars magazines. I had tons of stuff. It was fun.
Somebody had a question about the InSync cards that you worked on at Topps.
Yeah, that was me. Yep. We did those in like 3 days. That was like one of those super fast ones where myself and the guy I was working for at the time, his name was John Williams. We literally, just like the Pokemon set, for 24 hours, we sat in a conference room and we received one giant batch of art. this is the approved contact sheets of just all of the boys. And we hired a writer who was a staff writer for like Bop or one of the teen magazines. Like he was a staff, and he had all that content. So he just gave us words. There was not even like card 1, card 2. He just gave us content. And so we ended up just sitting there saying, okay, we did a design and like this. And so actually there was 3 sets that we were thinking about. Brittany, Christina, or NSYNC. And sales came back and said NSYNC is the one. And so we had a design done in like 24 hours. We worked with a company called MADA, M-A-D-A, MADA Design. They were up in the 60s. So we had them move through a design super fast. And then John Williams and I sat there with X-Acto knives and scissors and glue sticks, cut out the contact sheets and mocked up card front, back, and then sent all of that to our design team and said, go. And we turned that card set around, I think, in like 4 months. It was like
insane.
Breakneck speed.
So cards are so traditionally thought of as like a boys' medium.
Yeah,
But this seems like more skewed toward females. Was that?
Yeah. That was the point.
How'd that do? Like, what was the result?
Sold like crazy. Topps was really good about hitting the moment. They did Operation Desert Storm cards. Think about that for 2 seconds.
Wow. I don't know what to do with that information.
Okay. I was also there for the Blair Witch Project. We got Blair Witch cards out in like 7 minutes, and it made a crap ton of money because cards there's an immediacy to them where if you run out of packs, you're done and they don't replenish. It's the cyclical nature of baseball cards. Every season, every year, a new set comes out. If you didn't get it for 2025, you're done. We're on to 26. So people are trained to know that cards don't sit around on shelf. So we tried this to get it to move. And so the NSYNC cards did. They moved.
Crazy. Okay. So your time so we should talk about Turtles a little bit because I don't want to keep you forever. So the licensing of Turtles, was that very different since this again, they were making the new artwork and this was not an existing anime. Yeah.
So Turtles, I was there from the top of that. So I sat in all the meetings with Tom and with Gary, Gary at Mirage and the Playmates team and all of that folks and the style guide. I actually helped bring one of the original artists from the Mirage comic. His name is Michael Dooney. I got him in to do all the style guide art for us. And I was a Turtles fan since I was little, like the black and white comics, like that was my brand. So I begged, give me a shot here. And so that first year, like the shoes, the apparel, we did a second comic book series with Dreamwave, all of this kind of stuff. That was all like Alyssa and me. And we all drove that project working hand in glove with my boy Lloyd Goldfine, who I know you talked to recently. He just lives 5 minutes from my office. I see him. We're going to have lunch next week. So Lloyd, I would go downstairs. Lloyd would show me the style guide, what we're working on, the shows and all this stuff. And then that would help inform what we're doing from a consumer products perspective. So it was a really great process with Turtles. And again, that was a dream project because again, I was a Turtle kid. That was my jam. And being able to bring my passion for that old school brand to the kind of new 2K Turtles was fantastic. I couldn't have asked for a better project. It was super fun.
No, I was gonna say, like, especially because like that Ninja Turtle series from 4Kids was very more reminiscent of those comic books as opposed to
that was all Pete.
Yeah,
Pete wanted that series to mirror the OG Turtles and not be as silly as the Fred Wolf Turtles. And so Lloyd and Norman and that whole team, and I think Marty Eisenberg was on that show, like they really pushed the envelope to be a little bit more adult and a little bit more like the Mirage books, which I really appreciated.
What was like kind of like the pinnacle of that Turtles merch? Like what was the one thing that you guys did? It was like, yes, I'm glad we got that.
Oh man. I mean, God, I think doing the comics were pretty awesome because Pete was really reticent because he was still publishing. So getting that done and doing that was pretty cool. And then also getting to work on basically the first year and a half of the Playmates line, because I had bought all the Playmates toys as kids. So being able to help inform that first year and a half of that product with Shredder and April and Casey, like that really was a mind blow. It was awesome.
Mm-hmm. And they just, I think they just recently reproduced.
They just re-released them.
Yeah, the original 4.
Yep.
Tempted. I'm very tempted.
Hot.
You need it. You need it.
Yeah,
I
more
think I still
landfill.
have mine from
More landfill.
Yeah.
You are a toy guy, and I will put links to your stuff in it here. You build toys, right?
I do.
I mean, so your time working at 4Kids and licensing, you clearly worked with toy companies. Is that how you made your next move to working at Hasbro?
Yeah, it was actually serendipitous. There was 2 parts to that. So Hasbro had changed the brand team on Pokemon halfway through my tenure there. And a woman named Samantha Lomo and Kim Losey, and there was a third, Suzanne Schneider. They became our brand managers. They were incredible. This was the brand team. So they were putting the strategy together, how they wanted to go after the Pokemon, product. And then I worked with 2 designers, Wayne Losey and Vicky Stratford. Absolute geniuses. This whole team was incredible. They reinvigorated the entire Pokemon universe. So I remember having very, very deep conversations with CJ, with Pokemon Japan and Nintendo, where we said I brought design drawings in of Bandai's Digimon product, because the one thing Hasbro wanted was transformable Pokemon.
Oh, okay.
Never forget this. So that was a big want. That was the dream. You have Pikachu, Raichu, Bulbasaur, the Venusaur, whatever, Ivysaur. The guy, we actually sat in the room with the creator, and he looked us dead in the face, and he goes, "Once a Pokemon evolves, it never evolves back. So I will not allow that product to do that."
So this is like going back to like the universe of it. Like this is the lore, and this is why.
So Digimon can go back to their little forms.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I know. I cheated on Pokemon and worked on Digimon. I feel terrible.
And thus they made those toys for Digimon.
Yeah.
So we showed them. We were like, "This is Bandai's eating our lunch." And so what we did when we worked at Hasbro, when one of the projects that I started working on as an adjacency, different from the way I got in from a job, was there was something called, hold on, I have it written down, Think Chip, the Think Chip product, which was these little electronic figurines that had pre-programmed voice and sound effects. And there was a digital board game that you could place your Pokemon and battle in an arena against other people, and you could collect multiple Pokemon, and you could like, they could learn. It was a learning thing. The more you played with them, the more stuff unlocked. So that was one project that I worked on with Vicky, and it killed it because it emulated the video game gameplay where you could battle. And the other project that I worked on with Vic that was really a massive success was the Pokedex, the electronic deck.
Oh.
So that was one of my projects that at 4Kids I helped shepherd through the Hasbro pipeline, was the decks. And so that was super fun.
Now, you said you met the creator. So I think you're one of the only people that we've talked to who has. Now, what was this like? Was there a royal procession? It was he, super regular guy. He probably had a couple folks with him from Game Freak and Nintendo, because this was still 4Kids was managing Nintendo's licensing as well. So Cammy Budd and the rest of the Nintendo team was there, and it was a translator and interpreter, of course, and then everybody else on the other side of the table. And it was a very traditional meeting where Hasbro would present the line plan, and this was like presenting the line plan. Al, the team, this was like, this is what we want to do. Here's how we want to do it. This is how high up that went, because they were the master toy partner. So this was like, here, we want to do this, 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 and this. And then there was always the like wish list product.
And so I would be in there. I was taking notes, making sure things were there. So this was like me and Hasbro and everyone would be over here like strategizing, and then Al and everybody, and they'd all present, and here's the thing, and there was much gesticulation and being reverence and politeness and all this stuff. And that's when that conversation would become very frank to be like, yes, that's really fun, or this wouldn't make sense, or that's off brand, or that doesn't track with the lore. But that transforming thing, they took a run at that half a dozen times.
Wow.
And finally it was just like, please stop. Like, just
it's never gonna happen.
Never gonna happen. But those two, and the big talking ash. I worked on a big like 12-inch talking ash figure, and that was the other one. I helped track and traffic sound and voice clips from our friends downstairs over to Hasbro to make all that product.
Something Alyssa Tucker told us was that they would see that the Pokemon themselves merch with that would sell, but the human characters didn't sell as well. Is that something you saw too?
100%. The big talking ash did mediocre, but the decks and that type of that battle program killed it. Because again, Pokemon has a very similar DNA to Harry Potter. If you really think about it.
Yeah.
No one wants to be Harry. They want to be in Gryffindor.
Yeah.
I'm in Gryffindor. Yeah. I'm the wizard. So Harry Potter merch himself doesn't fly, but Gryffindor shirts and scarves and cloaks and wands all day long. So
an owl. Yeah.
Absolutely.
You want the stuff.
So Ravenclaw stuff, Slytherin stuff.
Yeah.
So Team Rocket stuff. Ash's stuff, like Misty's gear, Brock's thing, like you want to be in the world. You might emulate, again, you might aspire to, so I have Pikachu. Or you might say, no, I'm water. I'm a water Pokemon guy. I want, Staryu, or I want Onyx. That was the win, and the humans were not successful at all.
Well, I do know everyone wanted that hat. Ash's
Ash's hat's rad.
Made that. I think that's sold.
That's pretty hot. But to your other question, Tara, about Hasbro, at the same time, a good friend of mine who was in the publishing business had gotten a connection with someone at Hasbro in their publishing division, and they were looking for a new partner, a new licensee, to make Transformers comic books. And they said, hey, this guy's name is Mark Patton. He's a friend of mine. You can come and pitch for the business. Come and see if you can get the business. So he called me. I'm working at 4Kids. He called me and said, hey, Josh, do you want to come and be the creative engine for this? So I said, sure. So I worked with a buddy of mine. His name was Marshall. And we wrote up a script and a pitch. And I sourced artwork from an amazing artist out here in California. His name was Don Allen. And I put together kind of the story world of what we wanted to do. Mark built out with me the kind of financials of it. And then we went up to Pawtucket and pitched our business and said, this is what we do. If we got the deal, here's our story. Here's what we do. Here's how much money we're going to make you. It was us and another company. And the other company was Dreamwave, who I had done the deal with Turtles because they were friends of mine. So they ended up getting the license. But behind the scenes, the woman that we met with, her name was Ale. She was leaving the company. And she called me and said, hey, do you want my job? And I said, hell yeah, dude. So I got her job. So I was their director of publishing. And I ended up managing that company that got Transformers. They became my partner, and I got to oversee their business.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's so cool. So we should talk about something that you did at Hasbro that does overlap with 4Kids, which is G.I. Joe Sigma 6.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that happen?
So as always, Hasbro is a intellectual property company, but they're also primarily a toy company. And in order to sell toys, most normally the vehicle to do so is animation. So at the time, we had a strategic partnership with Cartoon Network, and we were doing things like Duel Masters and Transformers, Armada, and otherwise. And G.I. Joe was a brand that was very difficult to place. It's very jingoistic, a real American hero in like 2004, 2005. That wasn't necessarily like the coolest, okay? So the same guy that I worked with on Pokemon, Wayne Losey, he helped develop this new line called Sigma 6, which was more of like Elite Task Force, came up with a really great new toy line, how they were bigger than the old toys. They were really fun. And Cartoon Network passed. They were like, no, we're not feeling this. It's not our bag. And Hasbro went and did a strategic partnership as a co-production with 4Kids. So it was not necessarily a straight license. 4Kids was going to underwrite some of this, so they were going to have international. And this is again, Shelley helped build all this stuff out. They'd have international distribution rights, they'd have sub rights to sell to other markets and stuff. But Hasbro was going to be in charge of all the content. And 4Kids was also then going to help out with, VO, mastering, SFX. But Hasbro was going to we'll do the animation, we'll come up with the stories, but then all the 4Kids, team was going to do all kind of the heavy lifting. Right. Because normally we worked with a lot of people in Canada. We did a lot of voice work in Canada, guys like David Kay and Gary Chalk. And we worked with, a lot of folks in LA for our mastering and our, doing all of our, posts and our mix and our sound. That ended up being part of the 4Kids universe as well. So I was an associate producer on that show. And so we worked with a company called Gonzo in Japan. And so they did the animation. I was in the writer's room and helped break and craft all the stories with our animation partners in Japan. And then when it came back, we then shipped everything back off to Manhattan to be crafted and finalized for broadcast. So we were on the 4Kids schedule, but I was building with Steve Drucker, my boss, and the brand team, all of the shows, the 2 seasons in Japan.
Okay, so I have another question here because this is a major pivot. Like, you were not a writer before this, so
no.
how does were you and again, this is just. I mean, I'm all about teachable moments because I'm a dork. But how does it happen? Did you have the confidence that you thought you knew how to do this?
So I didn't write. I was so here's how it went down. I was in publishing for a while, and I was overseeing content, comics, novels, reference books, all that. So I was editing essentially all of this content.
Okay.
I was responsible for all of the editorial. So I would pitch out story ideas. And again, this is going back to my comic book days and so I was the editorial. I was the final bastion of story at Hasbro for a lot of stuff. And I'd work with the brand team. I'd sit there with the guy who runs Transformers and be like, oh, let's break this story. What would be a cool storyline for that guy? Can we use that guy from the past? Whatever. So My Little Pony, this would be super cute. What's Pinkie Pie doing? Whatever. There's a whole division at Hasbro that was responsible for all of the entertainment at the time. I pivoted from licensing into that division, which is essentially IP development. So I was a producer on Duel Masters, and I helped break that story and come up with that. Transformers Animated, Transformers Cybertron, a bunch of pony stuff. I did some DVDs in Latin America for Action Man, and Sigma 6 was one of those projects where I was within the room where the storyline would come in and we'd say, how about X, Y, and Z? I'd be like, well, that guy's motivation, actually, Snake Eyes, he was, his dad was blah, 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 and he was injured by so-and-so. How about we do this? And can the story turn left where you guys want it to go right? And we'd all come together and find out the right thing. And then when we'd get the transliterated script back from Japan, it would be transliterated. So it was very boring. So I would go in and be like, I'd do punch-ups and I'd work on adding in the G.I. Joe language vernacular from the brand. We have to call this the Ninja Night Cycle. That's what the brand name is called. Or, Duke wouldn't really talk like that. Let's give him this line. And then that's what would be sent over to 4Kids to do the VO to match all the lip flap.
Well, it really feels like you have an expertise in world building, understanding the show Bible and world building and making sure
I helped make the show Bible.
Yeah.
I hired the guy to build the Bible. Yeah.
That's so cool. Okay.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
With the stuff you were getting from Gonzo, I'm curious, was 4Kids doing more editing and rotoscoping on that, or was it already kind of
That was all done. It was in the can. Gonzo was doing all of it. They boarded it, they animated it, the full top to bottom. 4Kids was essentially doing post. So they were doing VO, music, SFX, sound, mix. And then it would come. So we would get it, we'd monkey around, play with it, send it off to 4Kids. They'd do their magic, come back. We would review the kind of is this what we want? We'd worked on the casting with them and all that stuff. That's who's Scarlet, who's going to be heavy duty, whatever. Then that would come back to us. We'd approve it, make sure that's, the timing's off. Music's too loud over here, whatever. Then approved, go back to 4Kids, on air.
Funny that you bring that up. Something I recall, and I think even like our fans like remember, is that I know like the voice of Duke changed like at some point. Maybe Scarlet as well. I don't know if you recall
them,
that. Any reasons?
Yeah, I don't. That was this is lifetimes ago. Yeah, I don't. But it may be between season 1 and season 2, perhaps there might have been a changeover. I don't remember.
Right. I think also, just with G.I. Joe overall, I don't know if is so much of unsolved mystery with Sigma 6, but I can only assume that Sigma 6 just didn't perform well. The ratings wise, toys.
It was really the product didn't hit. The core G.I. Joe collector at the time was broken into 2 segments. The original 1960s Joe collector, which was the 12-inch Joe, and then the vintage 3 3/4-inch 80s Joe collector. Right. This sort of like in between 8-inch collector didn't exist. And that was a really hard thing to break into. And that didn't catch on the way that Hasbro thought it was going to. And it was it was a shame because the toys were filled with play features. They were absolutely incredible. They had soft goods before that was popular for boys' toys. That was another reason. They had cloth clothing, and that was a little like, ugh. It was a little dodgy to some retailers because it felt very doll-like. And so there were some challenges there. And to be fair, and as much as we're talking about it, as much as we love them, the 4Kids ratings of that Saturday block generally were not great. Like at that time, 2004, 2005, the 4Kids, the Fox box or whatever it was called at that time, like the shows on in that block were sort of faltering in the ratings. It was not because Cartoon Net had taken over. There was a lot more options.
Oh yeah.
And Nickelodeon was really on the rise. SpongeBob.
Cable killed it. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So like local stuff was not where it was at. So that was just like there was a sad state of affairs of a bunch of different things that all sort of like kind of conglomerated into this one sort of like, oh man, good try. And it really was. It was a beautiful line, amazing show, but it just was like the wrong time and retail just wasn't.
It's I'm curious at all because like it seemed like it worked well with the Transformers franchise around that time period because that saw like a reboot and the toys were very different from the 80s and the 90s, but it clicked. And I guess like Hasbro must have been frustrated because they obviously were trying to do that with G.I. Joe. It's like let's do something different and
Hasbro had they had success with Beast Wars. That really brought Transformers back to the fore. Then they moved into what was now being referred to as the Energon trilogy, which was Armada, Energon, Cybertron. Those 3 series.
Was it? Sorry, my secret Transformers fandom's coming in. Unicron trilogy, I think.
That's it. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Unicron trilogy. Yes, thank you.
Not to correct the man who worked.
No. It's been a long time since I've been working on Transformers, and again, I came into work on Cybertron, the 3rd series.
Yes.
At episode 17. The first 17 had already been done. I finished from 17 to 52. I ended up working on the rest of that series. Same thing, working on edit and helping polish scripts, and I would go to Japan multiple times to work with the studio. Like that was rad. But yeah, that was fun. That was a fun show. That was a fun show to work on.
Sorry, I'm turning this into a Transformers podcast. Since you were so involved with suggesting lore, like being like a lore master or whatever. When Animated started up, because that was like a full Western production.
I worked on both of those seasons too, with Sam Register and Eric Steven Naylor and Aaron. I was in the room. I helped crack that show. Yeah.
And that show is like totally like a fantastic show, but like for those in the know, there's so much like little subtleties in there. I was like,
I pour one out for my dear friend Derek Wyatt, who's no longer with us, but
sad.
He was a driving force behind that show. And that Sam Register, who was our producer, he just really brought the A game across every single part of that organization to bring Animated to life.
It's fantastic. Fantastic series. Tara, can I hijack the show for one more thing?
Yes,
I think
please.
this isn't 4Kids related, but I feel like it's 4Kids adjacent because it's another like
Lay it on us, man.
It's another anime property for those that were watching Toonami at the time. Duel Masters is a series I
had the best time on that show.
I want to know a little bit what into this production. I know next to nothing about the series, but from what I saw, I'm like, this was an animated series in Japan, and of course a card game. It's still, and as far as I know, the card game is still popular to this day.
Yeah.
But I could immediately tell an American company has taken this show and kind of reworked the script and made it more of a comedy. I'm curious what the thought process and decision making went into that from the start.
So when I first joined Hasbro, day one, this is when I was in the licensing division. The woman who ran our division, her name was Jane Ritson Parsons. She was a delight. We went into a line review and they said, hey, with the whole division, we're going to show you something new that we're going to be working on. Brand new. Just coming from Wizard of the Coast. You're going to love it. And they roll clip and it's Duel Masters. And I'm watching this and I turned to my boss at the time, his name is Tom, and Jane, and I go, this is Yu-Gi-Oh! Because I just left 4Kids, where I worked a little bit on Yu-Gi-Oh! And they were like, tell us everything. So I spilled my guts about what Yu-Gi-Oh! Was about and all this stuff. And so similar to Yu-Gi-Oh! Where Mattel tried really hard to get product out and it didn't work because you couldn't emulate that machine. Hasbro did the same thing. They tried product like toy, bombed out. But once we understood that you could do exactly as you just noted, where you took the show and we really amped up the comedy on that one, just leaned into that as a full-on, just animated property that was there to support the card game. That's it. It was marketing for the cards, not toy product, not licensed product, nothing else. I had some comics. There was some other
Dreamwave. I think shortly before Dreamwave folded, there was
that was I wrote that deal and then I worked on the show. So that we did that, but that was one where this first season was like action, little comedy. And it was on Cartoon Net, and then that was when Sam Register was still there, and Tram Wigzell, who was our exec, Tram said, it has to be funnier for us to keep going. Like, we need a little bit more of that, because that was what was tracking. Because, as you guys, we all know, in the entertainment business, comedy shows are infinitely rewatchable. Jokes don't get old. If you watch an action show that has a beginning, a middle, and an end, straight narrative, you watch it once, there's a resolution, I'm good. Why do I have to see that again? I know the ending. But if I watch a comedy show, which is why SpongeBob is so successful, I can watch any episode at any time, at any place in the world, and I'll still get that gag and I'll still laugh. So we did that with Duel Masters, and we just said, we're going full bore silly. And we turned it into this like ridiculous comedy, and I ended up working on what we lovingly refer to as season 1.5 because there was a couple extra episodes of the first season that didn't make it, and then a season 2. So I worked on 1.5 and 2. 1.5 was with a showrunner. His name was Kevin Rubio. And then season 2, we had a showrunner. Her name was Charlotte Fullerton, and Charlotte was amazing. And she brought this incredible writer's room of like Murderers Row comedy writers here in LA, and we crushed it. And it was hilarious. And that show just was a delight to work on because literally it was old OG 4Kids style. We got a digibeta. Yeah. I sat there at my edit bay. Like we sat there at a guy in an edit bay. The Charlton team, you get episode 1, 2, 3, you get 4, 5, 6, and they just wrote to the lip flap, stupid jokes. I said yes or no. We pushed it and pulled it, and then we just recorded in Canada, and it was just like rinse, wash, repeat, and it killed it. It just killed it. It was awesome. So fun.
I remember a cover of Anime Insider, the old magazine, saying the next big thing, Duel Masters.
We wanted it to be.
Was it the next big thing?
I don't think it was at all. It was a thing. Yeah. WotC made good money on it. Don't get me wrong. WotC made good money on that. But like in terms of like a big intellectual property like Yu-Gi-Oh or a Pokemon where everyone thought it was going to be that thing, that trading card game and that intellectual property juggernaut, not so much. But
Mhm.
it did what it did and it garnered a great audience. But
Did
yeah,
it have a video game component to it?
yeah, there was
It
there was
did.
a DS, I think, and there was some other stuff. But yeah, I think WotC went out and did some licensing for interactive. But yeah, it was just that was a lot of fun. It was
Mhm.
fun.
I it's a series that I feel like it's one of those like fever dream things where I feel like only I remember that happening.
Oh,
But then again, I
no,
watched a
I
lot of
remember
TV,
too.
so
I actually I do remember too.
Mhm. Well, thank
I
you.
had one more question about Sigma 6
Please.
before I want
Sorry.
to hear. I mean, we've kept you forever. Someone asked, and I don't expect you to remember this, if you know why there were two different versions of the theme song.
There were? So you
Yeah.
got me.
I'll send you links. Our listeners know what more than the creators of these shows. It
So
is
this is my
bonkers.
guess.
Yeah.
I'm gonna take a guess on this. That was a Norman Grossfeld special because Norman wrote and produced all of the music and all of the theme songs and wrote all of the lyrics for all of the shows. Because once those go out into other regions, he got a royalty.
Yeah. Him and John Siegler. Yeah. Yep.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I think there was let's do a new theme song. So once we start syndication or I sell this in international markets, I might get another dip at that. That's my guess.
It's not a crazy theory.
No.
Yeah.
And actually, a fun story. The original theme song, the original trailer that I wanted that we cut for Sigma 6 in Japan, that we sent to 4Kids, was cut to the Prodigy's Smack My V Up because that was the tempo that Japan liked of that track. So we're in the Gonzo offices going over these edits with that as our temp track, and that's what we ended up sending to 4Kids to be like, do it like that with
Wow.
this kind of track.
Maybe that exists somewhere out there.
I probably have it on a server somewhere on my house.
See, we
I
need
might.
you to dig all this
That's
stuff
If I could
the
find
stuff.
that, I would love to find that.
Oh.
That would be the real sauce, but I
That
would
would
never
be
forget that.
good.
I was like, oh, I have that. I had an old iPod. I was like, yeah, we've got that. And that's what they looped. The next day when we came back, they showed us the cut with that track as the temp. And I was like, this is what's up.
That's funny. So again, can't keep you forever. You moved from Hasbro to Capcom, and I mean, you've had a bunch of different jobs before landing where you are. Can you just walk us through that?
I'll give you the 50 Cent tour. So from Hasbro, I went to Capcom, where I was in their licensing division again, and I worked on Mega Man, Street Fighter, Resident Evil, all the big guns. I did the first licensing program for the films. So the Mila Jovovich movies, I think it was 4, I forget. I don't know. That was fun. By the way, she's a delight. Mila is amazing. If you're listening, Mila Jovovich, you're absolutely
She
delightful to
loves
work
our podcast.
Big fan
Must.
of 4Kids
She
TV.
did some I
Hardcore.
saw her in, because I'm not a big action person, but I saw her in this like indie film where there was a puppet involved. All I know is that it was the opposite of what she normally did, and she was phenomenal.
Oh, she's great in everything.
Oh my God, yeah, just
That was a lot of fun. And so that was more of me working with, Japanese partners and the Japanese company. I spent a lot of time in Tokyo and Osaka. We did some animation and stuff over there too. So I worked on some Street Fighter animation, but there was, that was more just traditional CP. From there, that was up in Northern California. We were in San Mateo at the time. Then there was an opportunity down here in Los Angeles at 20th Century Fox, where they were also looking for someone to run their global publishing. And so that from my Hasbro experience, they were like, yeah, why don't you give that a try? So I was at Fox for 5 something odd years. And in the 5+ years I was there, I sort of went from just publishing, and then I took over their global collectibles business. And then I took over a bunch of other businesses that were adjacent. I ended up producing an Alien versus Predator anime that actually is sitting on a shelf somewhere at Disney that's never seen the light of day. It's called Alien versus Predator Annihilation. It's 10 episodes. It's done. It's in the can. It's beautiful. It's beautiful. So one day that might come out. All of that, I ended up becoming a sort of the de facto sci-fi nerd brand lead there. So for Alien, Predator, that stuff, I created Alien Day. So 4/26, the holiday Alien Day, that was one of mine. I brought that to the fore. And all in the while, was doing some business with my current company, Lightstorm Entertainment, which manages Avatar, Jim Cameron's company. So I had connected with our producer, John Landau, and my previous boss, her name is Kathy Franklin, on various publishing initiatives and other businesses stuff. And after, I was there for a couple of years, they came to me and said, we're looking for someone that is this strange unicorn between business, story, licensing, all of the things. It's hard to find someone that can do a bunch of different stuff that's not very myopically devoted to this one piece of business or this one other thing. And I was like, oh, that's me. And they're like, yeah, that's you. And so they recruited me. And when, John Landau, who just recently passed, the producer of Titanic and Avatar and Dick Tracy and when he offers you a job, you don't say no. And so I came into Lightstorm. I've been here about 8 years. I started out working specifically on Avatar content and storytelling and lore and world building. And I owned the Pandorapedia. And a few years ago, Kathy, my old boss, she left the company and I stepped in, and now I'm in charge of the franchise division where I'm working closely with our Disney friends on the Imagineering for all of our theme parks and our interactive business and the, marketing business and consumer products. So we touch all of the various parts and pieces of the Avatar franchise that aren't necessarily specifically the film. So everything that's film adjacent somehow, some way comes into our office and tracks through myself and our team.
And
that is so cool.
And I just recently experienced the Pandora stuff at Animal Kingdom.
Did you go down to Pandora, the World of Avatar? Did you go to Flight of Passage?
Yeah, just this past week of this recording. Pretty cool. I mean, because now it's like so many of the parks are doing the immersive stuff. And yeah, I got a kick out of it. We went on the Banshee ride first. And
pretty amazing, right?
Yeah.
Did you stay on the whole line, the 4-hour queue? Did you get through it fast?
Thankfully, I think we were online for maybe a half hour at most. So did have to walk through most of it, but
that's good.
But
so first day on the job here, John Landau says to me, "Hey, you want to go see something cool?" So I went, "Yeah, sure." So we walked down to the stage because we have our shooting stage here where Jim Cameron shot all the movies. Our virtual cameras here, and a guy he's filming performance capture for one of the kind of screen projections in the ride. So I watched that. And he goes, "Hey, listen, they're doing this guide for the park, a guide for Pandora. Go write some stuff about this. This is my first day." I'm like, okay. So I go back to my desk. I open up some documents that I got, that it's old Pandorapedia material. It's basically our wiki, our internal wiki. And I just write up a bunch of stuff about this creature and that plant. And this is called this. I named a couple. And I send it off to John. I go, "Here you go." Later, I learned that was published wholesale as the guide to Pandora in the park. So when you went to the park,
oh my gosh,
and like the guys working, like the people, the cast members, they use that as part of their script when they were talking to that's Soul's Delight. That's the Sun Lily plan. It does blah. I wrote all that stuff I just made it I just went. I was like, okay.
That's so cool.
So yeah, that's my little indelible mark at Pandora, the World of Avatar. But now we're working on another park that's been announced here. It's coming to Anaheim, so we're starting development on that. It's going to be.
I guess I'm going on that one too.
That's an easier commute for you.
Yeah, and hopefully, as long as they have the blue noodles. I want more blue noodles, please.
We got you covered, brother. We got you covered. That's the nickel tour from back at Tops in 98 to now.
So your dad is okay with you having gone to art school?
He actually, at the end of the day, he was cool with it because I could pay the bills. The kid's about to go to college. We're going to be cool. Everything's fine. So yeah, art school ended up being not a terrible investment, but again, have I done any art? No, but have the skills that I learned at art school helped me? I think so.
Yeah. What a very, very cool career you're having. I can't even, and there's still probably so much more to come. Yeah. From Al Kahn to John Landau, you've worked with them all. Thank you so much, Joshua Izzo.
Thank you both for having me. This has been an absolute pleasure. I sincerely appreciate it and had a great time.
moly. That was a roller coaster of an interview. What a fascinating career he is having. Like, I want to say had because it's enough to fill a whole career.
I noticed
but
you used the present tense towards the end of that interview. But
yeah, because
holy shit.
I mean, he could still have a whole other career. Like, if he had done one of these things, it would have been a huge career. So, yeah.
But the trajectory is just fascinating, and just, you know, I love hearing the stories about just like, because I was always going to ask, like, I didn't even like a lot of this podcast in case for those that are wondering, sometimes you might not hear from me because the questions I have are getting answered just organically through conversation. Mm-hmm. But I was going to ask, like, hey, how did they like get the screen caps from the anime onto these cards? Because, you know, computers weren't what they were back then. And then just hearing the whole story about, you know, scanning film and putting over a light box is, I can't get over that. That's one of those like
of it.
Yeah, one of those really great production stories that like wouldn't happen today because everything's so digital. But yeah,
well,
just
and
like
watching you geek out over some of those shows was so much fun for me.
I'm not even like a fan of like I don't like Duel Masters, but I was when am I ever gonna hear from someone who was so involved with that show? Just hear the stories about like, because like, you know what, I want to know. I want some of those answers out there because who else is gonna ask?
I'm so glad you asked. Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I don't know. It's one of those like I'm trying to think of a great analogy here that doesn't just make him seem like he's prey or something like that, but just, you know, it's kind of just like you're casting a line out there with doing this show. And you're reeling a big one, and he's so much more than what we had him on to talk about. So I'm glad we got to go into that other stuff. And I know this is a longer interview, and I hope he doesn't mind that we kept him so long. But I mean, we could have done another half hour easily. So
absolutely, yeah.
And he's such a great guy. So if you guys do have follow-up questions, please send them in, and we will make sure we get them to him. But holy moly, so cool. And what's funny too is, so I didn't explain this at the beginning, but the way that we found him, or he found us, he was following our podcast account. And when I posted something about Pokemon Live, he said, I made the underwear in that show. And I was like, what? Who are you? Because he didn't work at 4Kids very long, so he wasn't really on my radar of amazing guests to have. So I'm so grateful that he did that and that this worked out. Mm-hmm.
Like it reminds me of like the early days of this podcast, and I think like you were saying like, oh, if you've worked on this, if you've worked at 4Kids anyway, and you like to be on our show, please reach out. And I feel like he's got to be one of the few that have.
There's a few that we've had on.
To us.
Yeah, and I don't always out them because, you know, I don't know if they want, but this was such a funny story about the underwear that I was like, oh my gosh, I have to,
But it's just fascinating. Also, just bring it back to, you know, just like, you know, what you went to school for might not be what you wind up doing as a career, but what a tremendous and creative career he's had. And maybe he's not drawing, but.
Well, it makes me excited to see what you do too, because you and I do talk about our jobs, and like I feel like we're so adjacent to exactly what we want to be doing. Like I'm very grateful for my career. I'm very lucky, but it's not like if I had to write in Dear Diary what I want to do, it's not exactly, but it's close enough.
Right.
And I think we both feel that way, but you just don't know what I didn't think I'd be hosting a podcast. I didn't, so. You just don't really know, and I don't know. Trust the process? I don't know what the lesson is.
Life's crazy, and I don't know. You never know the kind of opportunities are going to come your way. Me, I just have fear of closing doors.
Right, but if you do it in the right way, like what I like about his story, and this is, I guess, a good lesson too, is. From Topps, he was working on Pokemon, and he could still dabble with the Topps company while he was at Pokemon. Then he was at Hasbro. He was still working on 4Kids properties while he if you're a good person and you do everything the right way, all these things can kind of commingle. and just build on each other, and then people start offering you different new opportunities. So I think, again, that I'm all about the teachable moments. I'm such a dork, but I like to learn. So
and those teachable moments, and aping something he said, it might be, you might learn more from those than anything you learned in college.
Yeah. Well, college, I mean, and I'm sure this is not a new idea, but it's so much about the social structure of college, too.
Absolutely. I would say if there's the one thing, the best thing I got out of college was just the network of friends, and artists that I know to this very day. So.
Yep. All right, so this has been a very long episode, so thank you for sticking with us. All the links, also look, oh my God, we didn't even get into it. He makes action figures. Check out his website in the show notes, and look at all his body of work. I mean, just so friggin' amazing. Also, if you like the show, what should they do, Steve?
Please, listen to more episodes. The best place to go is go to our website. That's 4kidsflashback.com with the number 4 in that URL. If you like the show even more than that, please consider joining our Patreon. Kick us some money, and you can get episodes a week early, ad-free, and some other bonus content that we're posting exclusively on our Patreon. Best way, that's not the best way is to listen to us. An even better way is to back us up on Patreon. That's more.
That's even more bester.
That's even more bester.
It's more bester. Thank you guys so much. We will
catch you next time.
4Kids Flashback is a production of Maji Media, hosted by Tara Sands and Steve Yurko.
Producers are Zach Logan, Tara Sands, and Steve Yurko.
For more information, go to 4kidsflashback.com. That is the number 4. And if you worked at 4Kids and have a story you want to share, please email us at 4kidsflashback@gmail.com.
You can find us on social media at 4kidsflashback, and to listen early and ad-free, head to patreon.com/4kidsflashback. For podcast merchandise, find links on our website and Linktree.
As they say on every podcast, if you liked this show, please subscribe, rate, and review, and tell your friends, or 4. If you want to check out other Maji Media podcasts, go to Maji, MAJI.media. Thanks for listening.